CFL 110, your weekly trip around the biggest stories in the Canadian Football League with Jeff Hamilton and Andrew Hustler Patterson.
Hey, what's going on, CFL fans, and welcome to another edition of CFL 110 here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel, brought to you by our partners at Coolbet. We will get to the lines over at Coolbet and check in and make some picks on Week 8 games in the Canadian Football League. But first up, we've got to get through a very big and impactful Week 7 in the league with two big divisional matchups in both the West and the East. Let's get things going and welcome in my partner in crime here on the program, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. Hammer, what's going on, dude? Great to see you as always.
Yeah, always a pleasure, my friend. Looking forward to hashing this one up. I have to give a shout out to Coolbet. I'd been stealing their lunch money for a couple weekends in a row. They got some of it back this weekend, but I rebounded nicely with the Sunday nighter in Hamilton and Ottawa, but it wasn't enough to get back to where you always want to be, even or better. But certainly looking forward to this week. Each week comes a new challenge, so let's get her done.
Well, listen, a big part of that last week was a lot of people riding with history and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at home, coming off a bye, but unfortunately for Bomber bettors and fans of the Bombers that packed Princess Auto Stadium for an 8th straight sellout, it was the Calgary Stampeders planting the flag at the top of the power poll with a resounding 41-20 victory over Winnipeg, really running away with this game in the second half after the Collaros injury. We'll get to that in a minute, but Jeff, this is 3 straight weeks. We've talked about massive statement wins by the Calgary Stampeders, and this is no longer, wow, these guys might be really good. It's who's going to catch them right now playing the way they are in the West. What a performance by Calgary, and this is not anything new.
Yeah, Huss, I think if you had any doubts about this team being the best in the league right now, that was confirmed with a second ass kicking of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This stretch here, this 3-game stretch, 2 victories against Winnipeg, the other, of course, being against Saskatchewan, is up there as easily the most impressive stretch so far this season. You're seeing it from all 3 phases from Calgary. We've talked a lot about Vernon Adams coming into Calgary in the offseason, bringing that culture, and most importantly, bringing that athleticism and dynamicism, if you will, to the offense. But it's that defense, Huss. It's the defense that keeps showing up. Another 2 key 4 interceptions, 2 on each quarterback in Winnipeg, to really lock this game down. And really, again, another statement game to your point here. I think when you look at Winnipeg, losing Collaros, like you said, we'll get to that. That obviously didn't help them, but I'm not, looking at Calgary obviously benefiting from that, but that not being the story in this game necessarily. This team is ready to go, a team that a lot of us thought was going to be garbage this year after missing the playoffs last season. A lot of the issues in the locker room, that was well documented. This feels like a whole new team, so a lot of credit goes to Dave Dickinson, who essentially, and myself included, was criticized over the offseason for essentially getting rid of most of his staff and keeping himself there. Well, here we are, 5-1 with the Stamps. Things seem to be working. Everything seems to be clicking. And if you don't have Calgary as the top team in the league right now, I don't know what they need to do to prove it.
The Stamps performance was, listen, the first game I think was a big surprise to a lot of people in Calgary, the way that they handled Winnipeg. Then you go in and beat Saskatchewan the way they did with everything that they were facing, the delay in the game, and doing it in a very tough place to play. And Regina was like, okay, the Calgary Stampeders are for real. But as you mentioned, in all 3 phases, they brought it again to a team that is not used to, walking out of that stadium, losing and getting drummed the way that they did. And listen, the Calgary defense has been absolutely phenomenal, and I will agree with you. That has been the unit that was leading the way. But all 3 phases were rolling on Friday night, and the offense in particular. Now, this may give some more questions about where this Bomber defense is at. But, Jeff, what stood out to me was Calgary's ability over and over and over again to move the chains on 2nd and 8, on 2nd and 10, on 2nd and 11. it did not matter if the Stamps did not get yardage on first down because Vernon Adams was hitting his receivers without a lot of difficulty for the most part. And they, in a lot of ways, ran the football up and down all night on Princess Auto Stadium on that Bomber defense. And, Vernon Adams, the defense legitimately has been like the top story. But as we get more and more into this year, I think we're seeing the effect of an elite veteran quarterback and what he can do to turn a situation around, because not only is he getting the job done with his arm and his feet, but you can tell he's inspired a whole new level of confidence as the leader of that team in his first year, only 7 games into the season with Calgary Stampeders.
And even to add the impressive, I think you touched on this, Huss, like when the Bombers lost that first game to Calgary, a lot of the narrative coming out of that was, well, Calgary was on a bye, right? Dave Dickinson's a good coach. They had a lot of time to prepare and to look at Winnipeg's weaknesses and whatnot. Well, Winnipeg had the exact same thing, right? Going into against Calgary, right? Coming off that bye, getting that opportunity, having to lick their wounds for that entire week from the ass kicking they had from the Stamps before, and they still couldn't get it done. So again, I even with Saskatchewan at 5-1, and I'm not trying to, dump on our friends over to a province over here, but I still think that Calgary is not only the best team in the league right now, they might be in a tier of their own, right? We were breaking up the tiers before. We had Winnipeg and Saskatchewan in that group, and we were putting Calgary in there now. Now I feel Calgary's moved up. Winnipeg has probably dropped down one, and we have a weird situation now at the top of the castle, despite having two teams at 5-1. But it is a great story, Huss, and I'll just wrap it with this: is that for years, years ago, and for years followed, it was the Montreal Alouettes, it was the Toronto Argonauts. Those markets need to, get an infusion of good feelings and good vibes, right? Well, it's been the Albertan teams for the last couple years. And while, Edmonton still has some work to do to get that good juju in their fan base, the Stampeders are doing that right now. They're giving, and I don't mean this to be too critical, but we know that Calgary is a fair weather fan base. They want to see a winner, and now they're seeing that team that they saw for a better part of a decade before the Bombers resurgent here. So it's not just good for Calgary and their fans; it's good for the league, and it creates some competition here. It's been a boring situation in this league for a few years, with the Bombers being the kings of the castle. They don't even look like they're in the top 2 in the West right now. And again, while that might suck for Bomber fans, it's great for the 3-down league and for the CFL as a whole.
Well, speaking of the Blue Bombers, the big story of the game from a Winnipeg side was the injury to Zach Collaros, who was leading back. And listen, I think a lot of this goes to some of the concern I had. You're going to tell me they're going out against and playing this Calgary defense without Stanley Bryant? That puts a little bit more on the quarterback. And Zach laid out, knew he was going to take a hit, aired one out, and got absolutely planted into the turf, head off the ground. I was sitting right behind the Bomber bench, and it was an immediate walk back and walk to the dressing room, and that was it for Zach Collaros. Now, good news on Zach. It sounds like he's practicing today. The Bombers have a Handled Internally podcast where he spoke to feeling pretty good, and we'll expect it to go forward this week. So that's great news for Winnipeg. But man, Jeff, it also, I think, shined the light on maybe some concerns at the depth of the quarterback position in Winnipeg, despite what Chris Streveler did in week 1, having the reps, knowing that Zach Collaros was suspended for week 1. You can touch on Streveler's performance, what he did and what he didn't do, but also the hit to Zach that knocked him out of the game.
Yeah, full transparency. We're shooting this Tuesday morning, and it airs at 3:00. We know that Zach's going to be practicing today, and from what I've understood, is going to be good to go this week, right? I mean, a lot of people, and for good reason, thought that maybe he'd be in concussion protocol, and concussion protocol takes a few days, right? It takes some time. Probably wouldn't lead to a practice on day 1. That's the case here for Zach Collaros. He was, as you mentioned, Huss, he was on the team's podcast. This team's smart. They wouldn't put a concussed player or a guy who wasn't going to be playing this week on that podcast, right? They wouldn't highlight him. Ed Tate tweeted out yesterday, talking about how he was feeling good. Well, all signs point to him playing, which is an incredibly important thing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, for the very thing that you just said in the second part of your question. The depth here, I think it's a little harsh. Huss, I think, to say that the depth is incredibly weak, and I'm not saying that's what you were saying, but a lot of people are out there look at what Chris Streveler did. Notably the marching the team down the field only to throw an ill-advised pass to the left side and get picked off. And then, of course, there was the other interception that was returned for a touchdown. Those are damaging plays, right? That don't make fans feel all good inside. However, it wasn't that long ago, Huss. It was week 2 when Zach Collaros was serving his 1-game suspension as the Bombers opened their season against the BC Lions. And we were all talking about how the Bombers had finally found their plan B in Chris Streveler and that he was capable of throwing the ball. And he had, all that time he had spent in the NFL is finally being paid off or whatever. So I think it's somewhere in between week 2's performance and last week's performance of what you can get from Chris Streveler, right? And you also got to remember, too, there is something to be said when a player, regardless of how long they've been on that team, gets those practice reps with the number one offense throughout the week, right? I mean, every player, Chris Streveler probably more than anybody, would live up to that expectation of preparing and practicing like a starter, but you just don't get the same reps when you're not working with the first team offense. So that's also part of it too. Some of it could have been game calling. To me, Huss, while it does expose the QB depth that I think we all really knew existed, right? I don't think anybody was expecting good things if Zach Collaros went down, whether it be Chris Streveler or Terry Wilson was going to lead this team to a Grey Cup. I don't think anybody was under those thinking. But I do think, and I think was so frustrating for fans watching Chris Streveler in that game was you still have Brady Oliveira on your team. Like, why are you making throws like that when you have the reigning MOP in your backfield who can get you those 8 yards? You're first and goal from the 8 and you're throwing it. Like, as much as Jason Hogan has been given credit here for his play calling, that's got to be the stupidest thing I've seen. So why not make your job harder by getting a guy to do things that you wouldn't even really ask Zach Collaros to do and make the obvious choice and hand off to your MOP? The Winnipeg Blue Bombers need to start running the rock. Yeah, they're banged up in the O-line. So what? There's a certain pride that comes with that front five, and they have confidence in each and every one that comes in. So hammer that rock. You could see it. I don't want to harbor that point, Huss, but you could see it on Brady's face after that interception. Like, he just looks to the line like, what are we doing here, right? And so anyways, it does expose the depth, but the Winnipeg staff, notably Jason Hogan, need to make their lives easier by leaning on a guy who this team's leaned on for years, but for some reason, whenever they get to the key moments of a game, abandon their best player.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know what the play call was. I do know it was a terrible decision to throw that football, and really was the decision that ended up being the catalyst on completely flipping that game and having it go Calgary's way. Streveler also had arguably the worst pick six I can remember seeing in the fourth quarter, which compounded everything from a Bomber perspective. But the quarterback conversation around Winnipeg, to me, is not as much a this week topic. It's a bigger topic going into next season. I mean, we know that Zach Collaros does not have many years left. Now, we did sign the 1-year extension, so he's under contract for next year. But it doesn't look like the Bombers, certainly this offseason, with the exception of the draft pick of Taylor Elgersma, who's in camp with the Green Bay Packers, has really put anything into a quarterback of the future. And I know there's conversations about Dru Brown, who obviously went to Ottawa. We're going to get to his status in a minute. Being the last guy that I think you felt might have the potential here in Winnipeg to be that starter beyond Zach. Obviously, he's gone making starters money with Ottawa right now. But we've seen the good from Streveler in week 2 of the season. We saw the not so good in the second half. And good news for the Bombers is, though, it sounds like number 8 will be under center, and we'll get to that Bombers Argos matchup coming up when we get to this week's games. Speaking of quarterbacks getting hurt, what a wild night it was between the Alouettes and the Argos. And this was a game that Toronto was up 18 points just at the end of the third quarter. And then Davis Alexander put the Superman cape on, led them back from the dead, took the lead late, albeit it was a costly play, Jeff, in that he went into the end zone for the go-ahead touchdown in the final minute, but re-aggravated a hamstring that potentially could keep him out now a month or longer. Listen, the game itself was amazing. Vintage CFL, incredible final 3 minutes, had a little bit of everything. But when we're talking about the hierarchy right now in the CFL, Montreal had been at the top, but they take a big, big hit moving to MBT as opposed to Davis Alexander, who never seems to come up on the wrong end of the score sheet when he starts.
Yeah, look, I'm going to start off with some positive because I can feel my blood boiling now, Huss. And I think this is the first time of this season where
in a mood today, folks.
I'm just in. I don't think it's a mood. I think, and if it is, I think it's justified. But a lot of credit to Davis Alexander. Anyone who would have watched him while he was nursing that hamstring injury on the sideline, like he was jumping up and down for plays. He was excited on the sideline. He was jacked for his team, right? You could tell he wanted to get out onto that field and compete with his teammates. And he did just that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he, as you mentioned, down multiple scores, was the player who ran in for that game-winning touchdown, the one that he ultimately re-aggravated his hamstring on, right? So, and you saw that after, right? You saw Jason Moss understanding the magnitude of the situation and giving him credit, calling him a warrior. You saw him enjoying it, right? He did interviews after the game knowing he was screwed. He even admitted, in that interview, yeah, I'm going to be out, right? He told Matthew Shinetti from TSN in the postgame, yeah, this is going to be a little bit here. So that's the positive. The negative part is Jason Moss. I like Jason Moss a lot. I really like Jason Moss. I'm a big fan of Ryan Didwinny, Jason Moss, Mike O'Shea. I would say those are my three favorite coaches in the Canadian Football League. I love Moss's fire. I love his attitude. I love getting into it with them when I've gone to Montreal and before when he was even more of a lunatic in Edmonton. But he wears this, man. This is a massively stupid decision by Jason Moss, and he deserves to be haunted for it if they have to put McLeod Bethel-Thompson in and for whatever, 6 games, maybe more, hopefully less. But he owes his one. And the reason I say that is because Davis Alexander looked hurt in the first quarter. He was laboring, trying to escape the pocket. He was able to do it, but not with the same precision and smoothness, if you will, as you've known him as a mobile quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback. So when you're watching him and he's laboring, he's not 100%. And what a panic move by Jason Moss with your team at 3-2 in an absolutely garbage East Division, right? We're talking about a 1-4 Argos team. We're talking about a 1-6 Red Blacks team. You're 3-2, and you absolutely cripple your starting franchise quarterback to edge out a victory against the Toronto Argonauts. How little do you respect McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who you now will have to lean on here for the better part of a month potentially? So to me, it was so stupid. I think it's such a dumb celebration after a warrior. Give me a break. Then to hear Moss talk now about how they're going to wait until he's fully recovered. Wow, what a great idea. And the other part I will say to put the cherry on top of this was a team that knew what it was like to go hot out of the gate and then have to pretty much hammer the brakes because you were so far ahead of the group that it kind of screwed up your season. Give some more time to McLeod Bethel-Thompson. He's the reason why you got him in the offseason, and bring veteran receivers back. Caleb Evans is there too, man, right? There's options there. You bringing back Davis Alexander, your franchise quarterback, the guy who gives you the best chance to win this early and then getting injured, you owe your fan base an apology.
Yeah, it's a risk management issue, and I'm not sure they managed the risk as well as they probably should have. Although, I mean, I won't go as hard as you because I do know that, there is some gray area when it comes to guys being able to play. And listen, he made it through the entire game until that final play with the game on the line, and he got them the win, and that's what they were setting out to do. But I can't disagree that it does now, Monday morning quarterbacking, look like a costly decision, and one that, could impede their season in a much greater way than if they had lost that game and just not had him able to go. That being said, to your point, I mean, you got 2 1-win teams. There's plenty of cushion right now. We get a chance to go without Alexander for the next little while. That might be good for MBT. You want to have 2 quarterbacks that you can, have confidence in that can help you win. They certainly have one. We'll see if Bethel-Thompson can get things going with Montreal as he takes over the starter's reins for the foreseeable future. Dru Brown, speaking of quarterbacks getting hurt, he got absolutely blown up. We haven't seen many of the grade 2 quarterback roughing the quarterback penalties, a 25-yarder. But it was a pretty serious shot from Deshaun Amos in the game on Sunday night. And listen, there was also talk about, the preparation. I mean, I think quarterbacks have to be putting their helmets on properly and fastening chin straps on it. That was crazy, and I think that'll be something. I'm sure there'll be a memo going out. But what did you think of the hit? And just, while we're talking about Ottawa, where they're at following another loss, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some heat on the seat of one Bob Dice as we get into these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, like I thought after that hit, I mean, it was because it ended up being a grade 2 roughing the passer, Huss, but it took some time to even have the flag out, right? Like it took Dru Brown on the field to really have that flag go. And I think that's because officials are still trying to learn about this. And the fact of the matter is, Huss, this to me is a prime example of a very hard hit. Right? Like he wasn't impeded. He came right off the edge. There was no there was no ducking from Dru Brown. So Dru Brown didn't do that typical thing what quarterbacks do. And they kind of bring their head, their chin down to their chest and it lowers the head, which makes it more susceptible or less wiggle room depending on where you are. But to me, this is a prime example of having to change muscle memory over what has been years, decades, possibly generations. Less generations, I'd argue, but definitely years, in that you cannot go that high when you have an open shot. Like, I don't understand why you need to hit a player right here, right? Or why can't you wrap them on the belly button there? Why can't you wrap them around the waist? That's the changing of the game, because the fact of the matter is, and we always go back to this kind of comment when we talk about players getting released, players getting, cut, players taking more money somewhere else. This is a business. And this business thrives when its best players are on the field. And no offense to Deshaun Amos, but nobody goes to games to see Deshaun Amos who isn't a hardcore Ticats fan or maybe met him after practice once. Nobody is going and paying tickets for him. People go and pay to watch Dru Brown throw for 300-400 yards. And while you might say that's not fair, they're all players, life's not fair. Positions aren't fair. If everything was fair, everybody would be getting paid the same amount of money. There's a reason why Deshaun Amos gets paid the money that he gets paid and Dru Brown gets paid the money that he gets paid. So while I understand there's no maliciousness to it, I don't think he tried to injure him. I don't think Deshaun Amos is a bad player. I don't think that you give this guy a fine. I think you need to suspend players, because the fact of the matter is the fact that he wasn't impeded, the fact that he didn't have somebody even alter his path or anything like that shows that he chose to go high. And regardless of the chin strap not being done up or whatever, the principal point of contact is the crown of his head to his chin. And that's what we need to eliminate from the game. And a 25-yard penalty, well, a benefit to any single series a team might be on is not an equal trade-off for losing your star quarterback. And to top it off here, I think that was the frustration you saw with Bobby Dice, who took his platform on TSN and said, like others have in the past, this league needs to do more to protect quarterbacks. This isn't changing the game in a negative way. It's changing the game in an inevitable way. Because the fact of the matter is, as football continues to garner stats, more and more stats on head injuries and long-term health issues, you think people are going to be signing up for football? They're not. We need to change the game. And you might not like the way the rules are that way. You might call it soft. You might call it whatever. We're asking players to go lower. And if they're not going to do it on their own, the league needs to dole out punishments that tells not just Deshaun Amos, but anybody in that situation that if you have a free lane to the quarterback, you're going to have to be responsible in how you tackle.
Jeff, we won't be getting to Ottawa later on in the program because they are on the bye, but 1-6, dead last in the East right now. How hot is the seat of Bobby Dice, and will he be coaching for his job when they come back from the bye week?
Honestly, it's a great question. I would not be surprised if it went either way. I think there's something to be said here that, as you mentioned, there's a bye week that usually comes with changes, or you have two conversations, Huss, heading into this bye week. It either is you got this week to figure it out, or you're going, or you replace them. And the thing is, Bobby Dice is obviously a great human. He has the local connections for us, but his record sucks. And the fact of the matter is he has 10 more losses than he does wins in 2.5 seasons in coaching. And this is a results-based business. And you can be the nicest guy in the world, and you can not lose a locker room for as long as possible, but somebody else's job is being dependent on yours, right? And this case is Sean Burke. So he needs to make a decision on whether you're the future here. There was a lot of people thinking that the Red Blacks were going to build on their 9-8-1 record last season. So far, that hasn't come to fruition. And I'd be curious about the locker room. Obviously, there's been some injuries there. Not having your quarterback for multiple games is a tough pill to swallow. You talk about quarterback depth. I think there's a massive problem in Ottawa as far as quarterback depth goes. But at this point, Huss, I mean, you either replace Bobby Dice now, replace him later. If he can't get into the playoffs, Huss, I think he's done.
Well, I mean, I just think back to, how crucial it was that they did something last year and they had that great 8-3-1 start and then sort of moonwalked into the playoffs and were done. And then, a start like this, and we can't ignore the fact that there's a guy with a hell of a lot of experience on the sidelines with him in Rick Campbell. It would be an easy flip. So
I brought that up with Dice in the offseason when they did all the thing. I said, "You sure about this?" I said, "You sure about this?" I was like, I love the confidence, and whatnot, but that's an easy slide a guy back into head coach. And there's a lot, like Chris Jones knew what he was doing, right? He didn't think it took a while because he didn't really put anyone below him that could just slide into his seat so seamlessly as a Rick Campbell could in Ottawa.
Well, listen, I mean, there's a lot of Bobby Dice fans around here and across the Canadian Football League, but
two on the screen.
I think if we're going to be talking about Bobby Dice as the head coach of the Ottawa Red Blacks, they're going to need to win some games and quickly. They are on the bye this week. One team that has been winning has done a complete 180 from their terrible start of last year. And it's funny, with all the quarterback injuries around the league, the one constant is Bo Levi Mitchell continues to sling it for the Ticats. Another impressive win for Hamilton. They continue rolling right now. And, while I think a lot of people thought that, this was going to be Montreal and Toronto at the top of the East, it's the Ticats that are taking a run right now at Montreal for top spot.
And when you look at what's going on in Montreal, I mean, they must be feeling pretty damn good about their situation here. I mean, they've been, they navigated through that 0-2 start. A lot of people were going, here we go again, only to rip off 4 straight in a row. And why not be excited about Hamilton, right? They're the team that has the longest Grey Cup drought. They're the old Winnipeg Blue Bombers of back, your slightly older brothers, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, where they struggled to get into the playoffs for quite some time, right? So I do think there's an excitement there. Bo Levi Mitchell is playing like that MOP caliber player that he finished last season. Obviously, we've been talking about Kenny Lawler. The guy's got 8 touchdowns. It was already a season high for him at 7. To see what he's been doing these last few weeks has been nothing short and incredible, and certainly he's put himself in a position to be at least in the conversation, if not leading it for MOP early predictions. So he's been nothing, he's been everything as advertised coming over there into Tiger Town. And the defense has been improved, Huss. That's the other part, right? I mean, they did a great job this past week of shutting down Ottawa in that second half in particular. I believe Ottawa only registered in 8 possessions, 4 first downs. So that's an impressive showing from a defense that we were very critical of all last season and really skeptical of this offseason, right? Ted Gavai has done an incredible job over in Hamilton. He's taken a lot of those guys from Winnipeg, including Kenny Lawler, and they've showed out. And it's been, again, really good feelings there. Scott Milanovich is a good coach. He's got that good rapport with Bo, and again, it just things are clicking for them. And also want to give a little bit of credit to Johnny Augustine, who's been getting his opportunities as Bell's been out. Greg Bell's been out of the lineup for the last couple of weeks. He's been taking full advantage of that opportunity. I think he finished with 85 yards last game, which was a season high. I don't think it's a career high. I think he's eclipsed that in his opportunities in Winnipeg for years. But that's awesome to see a guy, later in his career still churning out those yards and getting those big plays. So much like I was saying before, Huss, with the resurgence of the Calgary Stampeders, it's good to have a team like the Hamilton Tiger Cats competing this early, setting the stage, because Montreal is going to come back. They're going to be pushing with Jason Moss. Ryan Dinwiddie isn't going to be throwing in the towel anytime soon, and hopefully Ottawa can figure it out and we can get a really competitive group here. But it's good to have them rolling the way they are.
I'm here for it. I thought that they probably were good enough to be a playoff team last year. They just weren't able to get it done because of that 0-7 start and how poorly it went in the first half of the season. But Bo has been completely reinvigorated in the Hammer over these last couple of years. He's playing at a really high level, and it is a pretty juicy thought that based on where we're at right now, it is entirely conceivable we could see a Grey Cup matchup in November of Bo Levi Mitchell and the Hamilton Tiger Cats playing against, you guessed it, his former team, the Calgary Stampeders. And I don't think a lot of people that had that on the bingo card early on. Hey, listen, before we get to our picks for the game, couple other things, to mention coming out of the week. And listen, going back to Friday night at Princess Auto Stadium, it was sort of a strange feeling for Bomber fans walking out after their team got steamrolled the way that they did. That has not happened very often in the last number of years under Mike O'Shea. But as bad as the taste in the mouth of a lot of people with what happened in the second half, I think everyone will remember one thing about Friday night, and that was the incredible welcome back to Milt Stegall after, the family tragedy that he's been dealing with. And that was as genuine and as special a moment as I can remember in sports in a long, long time, Jeff. And I know you sat down with Milt, had a great piece in the Free Press on Saturday, just about the unique, special connection that's really hard to describe, actually, to people outside of this market of Milt Stegall and the city of Winnipeg and Blue Bomber fans.
And it's such a two-way street, right? Like the fans absolutely adore Milt Stegall, and Milt Stegall absolutely adores the fans. And I, in that moment you're speaking of before the game, that standing ovation, the blue wave of support, as I'm writing in my CFL rundown column this week, it was just so incredible to witness. I was about 15 feet from the panel, so it was on field level. I'd gone down there to talk to the panel, some other friends who had come down there, whatnot, and just to see it kind of start, keep going. I mean, you could see Milt was visibly emotional. He was, tears were welling up in his eyes. He did shed a few for sure. You saw his support from his friends on the panel, notably Davis Sanchez, who's like a little brother to him. I think it was, it's been well documented that this wasn't the game that Milt had circled on his calendar, as fitting as it was being in Winnipeg. It just, he described it to me in our sit down as divine intervention, that it was, God at play here, that he was just, it felt like the right moment. And then it was Winnipeg, and that culminated in this moment, Huss, that like I've been fortunate to see a lot of cool things over my career, especially covering sports, but that ranks right up there, man. I mean, you could feel it. It wasn't just a cheer. It was like an embrace. And the way I, described it to people was that moment felt like to me that the fans were giving him a memory back after all the memories he had created for them on the football field as one of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' greatest players to ever don a jersey for that team. And so it was an incredible moment. It was a great opportunity to speak with Milt earlier that day. And if you haven't read it, I do suggest you do that. I felt what was different from the pieces compared to other pieces was I really wanted to know where, and this is a question I wanted to know before the untimely death of his 20-year-old son Chase, was where Milt's perspective comes from, right? Like on the outside, Milt's a cocky guy, you see it in there, whatever, but he's probably one of the most down-to-earth, empathetic, caring individuals that you'll ever meet. And I wanted to know where that perspective came from, where that strength came from, right? You saw on social media as the weeks, moved on, like him becoming more into the public eye and him sharing like all the good things that were about Chase and wanting to bring smiles and love back and whatever. And so I asked him about this perspective. I'll make this quick. He lost his own father when he was 17 in grade 12. And, his dad was dealing with some ongoing health issues, but it was sudden in the respect that it wasn't, right around the corner or anything. And he felt, he had a basketball game that night and his mom told him to go play. And the lesson in that to him was, we need to move on. We need, yes, grieve, but you need to continue on with life. And now that's rooted in his family right now. And the other thing was his parents. And his dad was born in 1922. He said his dad's grandmother was a full-fledged, his words, slave. Like his dad grew up in New Georgia, where he saw people get hung and he saw people falsely accused. And it never changed who he was as a human being. And Milt saw that, right? Milt saw that in his dad and never wavered. He, when he ended up making money and getting into real estate, he would let people, people who struggle with rent, he was empathetic with those people. He wasn't, he always had that big heart. And his mom worked at the Burn Institute at Shriners Hospital. So he used to watch his mom as she would dress these horribly badly burned children from head to toe, treating them so warmly as if they were her children, that just stuck with him. And his takeaway was that, how can I, who has been given everything from my parents, not be the friendliest person in the world and do great things like they did when they had nothing and I have everything? And so that was my big takeaway. It was such a great moment. And, we all hurt for Milt. Obviously, this isn't like an ending to his pain or what he's going to deal with. But I know, as he continues on his healing journey, that he'll have this memory, with him forever.
Yeah, the jersey is 85, but he will always be number one in the city of Winnipeg. One other thing, just from the quick notes, Shawn Lemon has been cleared to return to the Canadian Football League. He, of course, this last season after a gambling snafu. Do we have any takeaways from this? And do we expect to see Shawn Lemon back on a CFL field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got to serve his 2-game suspension, Huss, because the thing that the Montreal Alouettes conveniently left out of their press release was he got drug tested and failed. So he has a two-game test, which, whether you agree with it or not, technicality, one of them is already in the rearview mirror, Huss, because he signed the contract like hours before that kickoff. So that was one of the games, and he'll miss the next game, but he'll be back on that field. To what capacity, that remains to be seen. If he can be as impactful as he was for the Alouettes in their championship run, that would be a really good thing for Montreal's defense. Again, I don't think you can rely on him as much, but we'll have to wait and see for that. As far as him being back, being reinstated, I know there's a lot of people out here that have been pointing to the NFL and talking about how their, 1 game or their 1 year suspension and how, he's done his time and whatnot, and he bet on his own team, and that should be the rules for betting on your own team. It's like, no, everything isn't equal. Like the NFL, if you're betting in the NFL, making that kind of money, you're a moron, right? Like, and that's why you have those unions fighting for you, because the stakes are super high for you as well. The CFL, man, is a playground of risk for gambling. Like, that's the biggest issue for me in all this, is that the CFL is not the NFL. It's not anything like the 4 major leagues. They don't have the money invested to prevent these kind of things. And therefore, I think they need to throw the book at anybody and everyone. And this is the thing. This is the cardinal sin in sports, Huss. You can, and I mean this with all due respect to the viewers who are about to hear what I'm about to say, people who know the work I do, I dive into this world of domestic violence and abuse and whatnot. You can literally beat your wife and get another chance to play football. You can't bet on games. Like, that is like the number one cardinal sin here. And the issue I have with this is that people are trying to make a black and white issue gray. Like, oh, he only betted this much money, or he bet on his team to win. Where does it stop? So you can bet on a guy's props? Like, you're in practice all week, okay? You know that this guy is being fed the ball in the red zone. This is your go-to guy. You put money on him to score a touchdown. That's okay because your guy scored a touchdown. It was a benefit to your team. That's absolute bullshit. Like, Shawn Lemon should be out of the league, throwing the book at him. The CFL should be praying that nobody bets on their league, because they're not they're not probably doing a good enough job to monitor it. And this message to me tells a guy who might be on his way out of the CFL and has no plans on coming back that he can hammer a wager, and the worst he's going to get is a year suspension in a league he doesn't have any plan on returning to. So to me, this is a massive mistake by the CFL. I think this is a first misstep by Stuart Johnston, who has come in here and tried to make his mark on the integrity of the league. This is a bullshit measure for integrity. And welcome back, Shawn Lemon, to a joke of a league that the CFL is, that they allow gambling. I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion.
Listen, I'd love to stand up here and go toe to toe with you on this, but I actually feel very strongly the same way. I mean, this is not a gray thing. This is as black and white as it comes. You cannot bet on the Canadian Football League if you are a player in the Canadian Football League.
It should scare the shit out of you to make a bet on any league, on the league that you play in. It should scare you to do that. It
shouldn't even cross your mind. That's like the first thing they do when they get you in training camp. Welcome to Winnipeg, guys. Here's the training camp. Okay, first things first. You bet on the games, you're out, and you'll never play again. The threat to the integrity of the game is too great to have there be any wiggle room on this. I'm really surprised that Shawn Lemon has been cleared to return. He has been a very effective player in the past, and we'll see what he does on the field. But this is a decision that has some ramifications far beyond just the player that we're talking about. Well, speaking of Montreal, let's get to the games. We'll head over to coolbet.com, fire up the lines, and we got 4 big matchups beginning on Thursday. And I will say the juice on this game took a bit of a hit with the injury from Davis Alexander. I mean, how good would it be right now, Jeff, if we were looking forward to Thursday night, Alexander versus VA, arguably two of the top quarterbacks and top candidates for MOP at this point. It will not be Davis Alexander. Of course, as we mentioned, McLeod Bethel Thompson gets the start as the Stamps return home, coming off those 2 massive road wins in Saskatchewan and in Winnipeg. The line for this one is 6 for Calgary. Listen, this would not be as long of a number if Alexander was in, but he isn't in. McLeod Bethel Thompson hasn't looked particularly effective so far as an Alouette. And we all know what Calgary's up to, and that is demolishing quality teams as they've done for the past month. 6 points is a lot. Where are you coming out on the end of this one to kick off the week in the Canadian Football League?
So, no one loves 6 points. No one loves 3.5 points, right? Especially in the Canadian Football League. But to what you said at the end there, Huss, this is where I'm going with this. This team has been the underdog in every one of their games, first off. Credit to John Hodge on that one. I listened to the 3 Down podcast. He said that one, which is pretty impressive to me in the fact that how disrespectful people can be to him. So now they're finally getting their numbers. But to your point, they've been beating the bricks off teams, right? And it hasn't mattered where. Like, they'll go on the road and beat you. They'll be at home and beat you. So why stop now against an injury-ravaged, well, maybe not ravaged, but certainly an injury-hurt team in Davis Alexander not playing? I'm taking the 6 points. I mean, if you think they're going to win by 3, which I definitely do, I think you can hope that they get into a situation where they're down a couple touchdowns, or maybe 17 points. I do think Calgary will show no mercy to this team, particularly at home. And if they can get into that position where the Alouettes late in games have to go for touchdowns, not field goals, then I think that they easily ride to this. Now, 6 points is tough. The Canadian Football League is difficult to predict, but I'm not going to be the one that's turning their backs on the Calgary this week. I'm gonna say they cover the 6 points. Calgary at home.
Yeah, listen, it's pretty tough to go against the Stamps right now, and I would have loved to have maybe thought about jumping on Montreal as a road dog if Alexander was there. I don't have the same confidence of MBT, and listen, they got to go in and take on that Calgary defense that has been right at the top. And heck, as long as VA just keeps on chucking it to Alford, They're going to be fine. What an unbelievable start to his Canadian Football League career as one of the top playmakers in the league already. I'm going to ride with you on this one. I'll lay the 6 on Calgary until further notice. They are the team to beat, and I think with a backup quarterback coming in, Calgary being at home, the run that they're on right now, pretty hard not to go that way. Another big line.
I know. That's why I'm smiling ear to ear to this one, Huss.
The Edmonton Elks coming off the bye, 1 win on the season, in danger of being completely left behind and in the dust in the West. Get back at it in Saskatchewan against the Riders, who had a hell of a performance of their own, and a big win in BC last weekend to get to 5-1 as well. The Riders are 10-point favorites at home to the Edmonton Elks. Is there anything in Edmonton that makes you think that they can hang with the Saskatchewan Roughriders and at least keep this thing to within single digits?
Yes, I do, Huss. And that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know if you can tell, I'm not really looking at the screen. It's because I'm looking at another tab in my computer right now. Just wanted to make sure that I was sure about this game. And I am, is that it was only last season. It was only 1 year ago that this team started the year 0-7 and then went into Saskatchewan seemingly left for dead, Huss. Left for dead. No chance they beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who at the time had a great defense, was clogging up the run, all those things, and they deliver a 42-31 victory. So not only did they make it, they won by double digits. Huss, they didn't just cover, they won by double digits. And it was Trey Ford that came in that game. He threw 252 yards, but more importantly, and I think this is the key thing here, Javon Leake had 169 rushing yards. Justin Rankin had 60. Trey Ford had 46 of his own. So this to me is almost kind of like fate here, Huss. So this is a team desperately needs a win. Trey Ford, different situation. Trey Ford was inserted into this game after a tough start, right? Didn't get the start out of the gate, but he still found himself in a tough situation. This is another tough situation. Assuming they go back with Trey Ford and they don't go with Cody Fajardo for this game, and I do think they'll go with Trey Ford. I hope they go with Trey Ford. I think this could be his way of trying to get things done. I think he knows in his, in his heart that if he can't perform in this game, if he can't will his team to a victory, he's going to get replaced after this game. So what are we asking out of that, Huss? A guy's back against the wall, back against the corner, not just him, his entire team, and we're just asking for them to lose by 9 points? Give me the Edmonton Elks.
I appreciate the bravado in backing the Elks right now, which is something that
it's my play of the week.
I'm gonna have a tough time doing. Listen, normally in these cases, I'll take any excuse or any reason to take a double-digit underdog. I don't have that same confidence in Edmonton. I mean, their performance against BC at home in their last time out was so ugly, barely putting up like 100 yards of offense, getting absolutely humiliated in every aspect of the game. They gave it. One player had 30 carries on the other side. Like, what's the Riders and AJ Ouellette going to do to these guys?
Yeah.
Saskatchewan looked amazing last week in that game against BC. That final score of 33-27 flattered the Lions. They're back at home. I think that the Saskatchewan Roughriders, listen, I did my kind of tiers of the West afterwards, and it was Calgary, Sask, Gap, Bombers, Lions, Gap. There might be even an extra Gap in there as well, and then Edmonton right now. So, I mean, listen, credit to them if they can find a way to be in this game and potentially win. It would be great for their prospects moving forward. To me, these teams are just in two different area codes and weight classes, and I'll hold my nose and lay the 10 on the Riders.
I'm going strictly off desperation, man. Strictly off desperation.
Well, Bombers and Argos coming up on Saturday. This game right now, we expect Zach Collaros to start for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Still haven't heard on any potential return of Chad Kelly. Winnipeg, a 3-point favorite in Toronto. Jeff, I'll say this from a Bomber side of things. Makes me nervous to see the Bombers favored in this case. We have seen the Bombers have all sorts of fits with Ryan Dinwiddie and the Toronto Argonauts over the last number of years. In the regular season, in the Grey Cup. I guess if it's Nick Arbuckle starting, there will be some semblance for the guys that were on Winnipeg last year to maybe see if they can get one back on these guys after the loss in the Grey Cup. But history tells us that BMO has not been kind to Winnipeg, even when they have been the class of the league for the last 5 years. This is not, regardless of who's starting at quarterback and regardless of the one win that the Argos have right now, this is a tough spot for Winnipeg. And I certainly wouldn't even consider it at more than 3, but as 3-point favorites with Zach Collaros in, can the Bombers straighten things out and get back on track in Toronto?
I'll agree with you on one thing. The Bombers have had a tough time at BMO Field. I've been there for them. And like you said, they go into that game usually on some kind of hot streak or certainly the class of the league and have just had mixed results, right? They've lost games. They've lost to Nick Arbuckle in a regular season game in BMO during this, their terrific run of seasons here. What's different though, Huss, is they're reeling on a 2-game losing streak in this one. Helps that Zach Collaros is obviously going to be playing in this game or likely going to be playing in this game. That would change my opinion about this. But because the Bombers show up with a chip on their shoulder and dare I suggest maybe even a little desperation, right? Because BC did them a favor last week in losing to Saskatchewan, but I don't think they're going to be looking to be doing them many favors moving forward here. So you want to create that wiggle room between you and the very least BC, right? As you have 2 5-1 teams that are showing no signs of really slowing down. Now, for that reason, I'm taking the Bombers in this one. I think this is one of those games that's going to be tightly contested. I'm not, we're not asking for the Bombers to lose or to win by a large margin. And 3 points obviously would be a push. I have all the confidence in the world that this Bombers team will rebound and come back and win by a field goal. Now, I say those words, all the confidence in the world. I'm not ignoring what you've been saying about Ryan Dinwiddie. He's had the Bombers' number, but it's just, even if Chad Kelly does come back, we still don't really know. That changed. It was a week-to-week thing, or it was going to be a couple weeks, and then it changed to he's not going to. I think Ryan Dinwiddie was just tired of answering those questions every week, so then he gave it. He's not going to be back till at least week 7. Well, week 7 was this past week. We still don't really know what his situation is. But even if Chad Kelly does get behind center, Huss, I don't think he's going to be the Chad Kelly that we know. Right? He's going to be. He hasn't played all season long. He hasn't faced those real live bullets in a game. And I just see Winnipeg's defense having a much better performance. If there's anyone looking for redemption, Huss, from the Grey Cup, I would argue it's Jordan Younger, who got eaten alive, obviously, by Nick Arbuckle in their offense. So all those things considered, I'm taking Winnipeg on the road in what is a difficult place to win, particularly for them, but I think they do it this time given the circumstances heading into it.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, you can talk about Jordan Younger from the Grey Cup. We can also talk about Jordan Younger's unit from last week against the Calgary Stampeders because they were on the field all night and couldn't get off of it. And I think definitely need to step up their level of play, if they're going to get a win. I like the combination of the heebie-jeebies of what we've seen from the team in the last couple of weeks against, albeit a great Calgary team, the history. I think I might feel better about Winnipeg. You mentioned the Argos have lost their last couple of games. I actually think I might feel better about Winnipeg had Toronto won last week, because I think the fashion that they blew that game and lost is going to make them even more prepared to do what they have to do to finally finish off of a game. Now, the one thing I'll say, I think if I'm taking Winnipeg, if I like Winnipeg, I'm not even going to touch this point spread. I'm just going to bet them at minus 139 on the money line, because the other thing that we've seen between these two teams over and over again is incredibly close games as well. And even though we're just talking about a field goal, I'm not sure that this game doesn't end within a field goal, regardless of who wins on either side. So I'm going to take the Argos as the home dog. I'll take the 3 points. I hope that the Bombers can win from a Winnipeg perspective on this one. But when it comes to the cool bet lines, history, the direction of both of these teams, questions about the Bombers after that great start in these last two games, I'm going to take the home dog at +3 and expect this one to go right down to the final buzzer. Last game on the board is the upstart Hamilton Tiger Cats going into BC. Long travel going in. What a great quarterback matchup we've got between Bo Levi Mitchell and Nathan Rourke of the British Columbia Lions. And BC, 3.5-point favorites at home, coming off their fourth loss of the year, down 2 to the Riders on the and 2 to the Bombers so far in the season.
So is the line 3.5?
The line is 3.5
in favor of BC Lions,
BC
right? Not the East leading.
No,
the Hamilton Tiger Cats
are
the
not
third
favored.
place. The third place team in the West, or fourth place team in the West. Sorry, excuse me. Fourth place team in the West. School bet knows something we don't.
Well, BC at home.
Are they predicting a stomach flu for Bo Levi Mitchell?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Kenny Lawler's playing.
Sunday? Yeah, okay. Kenny Lawler's still in the. Yeah, you know what? I get where they're coming from in here. That 3.5 points. Like, I think this one's going to be a shootout. I think that's the beauty about Hamilton, and that's actually the beauty about Bo Levi Mitchell. Like, he chucks the ball no matter what. Like, especially if he's down. So they're either going to get up, and he's going to chuck the ball, try to, put BC out of it, or they're going to be down and Bo Levi Mitchell is going to chuck the ball. Like, he's probably I probably have the most confidence in the Ticats offense to come back on a lead just strictly off the weapons they have and the arm and courage that Bo Levi Mitchell has. He'll toss up the ball, whether it's to Keandre Smith, whether it's to Kenny Lawler, whether it's to Tim White, whether it's to Shamar Bridges, whatever, right? He's got targets there. And like I said earlier, I like what Johnny Augustine's been doing. So I think that I think much like last week, like what's with the respect to the BC Lions? Like, I don't, that score last week flattered them against Saskatchewan. So in this case, I'm riding the hot hand of Hamilton. I don't care that they're going into, that doesn't matter to me that they're going into BC. Like, I think this is a team that's going to keep on rolling. And much like you said, between Winnipeg and Toronto, I see it being a shootout. And it's whether it's BC trying to climb their way back into the game or it's Hamilton trying to climb their way back in the game. Two potentially prolific offenses. I'm giving this to Hamilton. I'm taking the points all day.
Yeah, I can't wait for this game. It's going to be a real fun to watch because I think we're going to see two of the best quarterbacks air it out. I certainly expect the total for this game 54.5. That's the biggest we've seen on the board in a long, long time. But I'm sort of with you. I'm a believer in the Ticats right now. I think this offense is, humming at a level that is very, very difficult to stop. The BC defense, I think, has some major, major holes in it right now. I think if BC's going to win this game, Nathan Rourke is going to have a monster game. As we get closer to the weekend, it'll be interesting to see some of the prop numbers that are up, particularly in the passing game. I think we can see both quarterbacks over-unders being well into 300 plus. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think the Ticats are feeling it right now. And this is also a team that remembers what it was like to start off with all those losses at the beginning of the season. And I think they're sort of liking this neighborhood that they're in right now. And, and know that, with what's happened in Montreal and this loss to MBT, there's a real opportunity for the Ticats to maybe sort of go and plant their flag at the top of the East Division. And we certainly know how important winning a division is with the one home game with your path to the Grey Cup. So as 3.5-point dogs, this one I think was maybe the easier pick of the games this week. Let's take the 3.5 points with Hamilton. I wouldn't even be surprised if we're talking about Hamilton winning outright as a +133 money line underdog. All right, so we both like Calgary and Hamilton. You're on the Bombers. I'm on the Argos. I think the Elks Rider game with that double-digit spread is sort of we'll just kind of push that one out. What do we think about this for our CFL 110 parlay, Hammer? We take Calgary at -6, or we'll get it to -5.5. We'll take Hamilton at +3.5. And let's just take the Bombers money line. So If the Bombers win by 1 or 2, you're on Winnipeg. I could definitely see them winning. I think it's going to be tight. So let's not worry about the spread for that one. Winnipeg to win, and then Hamilton to cover 3.5. Calgary to win by 5.5 or win by 6 or more. When I put that in at Coolbet, it comes up to plus 511. I'm sure once they're finished boosting it, we'll get 6-1 on that.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's as you were talking about that game, that matchup between the Bombers and Argos, I was thinking of all those crazy games in Toronto, like where it was like 1-point wins,
Yes.
2-point wins. Remember that game? Wasn't too long ago. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before, where the Bombers just kept fumbling the ball.
Yeah.
They kept on, remember I think it was the game Dempsey.
I think that was last year. It was part of the 0-4 start.
It was that part. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was part of that 0-4 start. I remember going into that room. I wrote about this at the end of the season. I remember going to Dempsey, he would look defeated, and Brady looked like he wanted to say something really, really, out there. And it was just a pivotal moment there where they're just like, what are we doing in here? It was just such a horrible performance. So that's the kind of curse of BMO Field. I'm hoping, Huss, that they went through that moment already and now are going to be on the receiving end. So I'm with you. I think that's a great choice. I think, even as you were saying the picks, and I was more confident in the Edmonton plus 10 than I was in Winnipeg minus 3. So I do think that, Winnipeg to win that game in the money line, that's a good odds. I like the other 2 picks. So you know what to do now. Go put your mortgage on it.
Yeah, coolbet.com. We'll have it up in the combo cards at the top of the page. You can also check on the exclusives. We'll do something in the exclusives tab for the Bomber Argo game coming up on Saturday. Again, Thursday night, Montreal and Calgary. Friday, Edmonton at Sask. Saturday, Winnipeg and Toronto. And the Sunday finale, the Ticats at the BC Lions. By the way, just as we wrap, interesting staying at Coolbet to see how the Grey Cup odds have changed week after week after week. We remember talking about Calgary, who opened the season as the longest shot on the board at 23-1.
Were they 6-1 last week?
They were 6-1 last week. They are now the second shortest number on the board. The Alouettes are still the favorite at plus 240. The Stampeders are now plus 325.
Wow.
Sask plus 350. Bombers plus 450. And then a gap. Hamilton at 11-1 right now is an intriguing number, to be perfectly honest. I think they're sort of underpriced. Toronto and BC at 15, Ottawa 27, and Edmonton 60-1. So the landscape's clearing a little bit right now. We knew that last week with those divisional games would be a very impactful one. There was the potential we were going to have four-win teams in the West. It didn't go that way. Calgary and Saskatchewan with the big statements, and we'll see if the Bombers and BC.
That Hamilton number's interesting, though. And it's not that's the thing. It's one of those things. If you like that number, it's not going to get longer if they win this week. So they're kind of sleeping on the 4-game win streak from the Ticats, and also, Haas, we know how the East is shaping up, right? There's a better chance to get there through the East. I like those a lot. And if you think, but at the same time, if they lose to BC this week, it probably does. So something to consider.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's all there. Check it out. But the Bombers now at plus 450. But Calgary, the biggest mover over the last few weeks now, just plus 325, second shortest odds on the board to win the Grey Cup. Check out Coolbet if you haven't played there before. Great CFL lines, props, and more. Use the promo code WST when you get over there. Hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. That's going to do it, Hammer. Enjoy the games this week. Should be another awesome weekend of 3-down football. We'll chop it up again next week right here on CFL 110. Thanks for doing this as always.
Thanks a lot, my friend.
You've been listening to CFL 110. Tune in next week for more great Canadian football discussion.